This is a Hayward Tuck Stories recording of Some Talk of Monsters, Book 1, An English Heritage, Chapter 2, Kip and the New Chicks. It was during Freshers' Week when the boy named Kip had burst into the college canteen yelling, "It's gone! They pulled the treehouse down!" A table of fourth-year students couldn't help but notice the poor young man. They each studied him closely as he stood looking foolish, regretting his grand entrance. "People can be so cruel," said Poppy, reading her geology book. "And on his first day too. It's sad." "What's going on?" Jamie asked, coming back from the toilet. "The new kid in the black hoodie," Sarah said, inspecting her long hair for split ends. "Everybody's laughing and staring at him." Brian picked off a blob of pasta sauce from his rugby shirt and grumbled, "He knows about the treehouse, Jamie." Jamie turned to look at Kip. His mouth tightened. "He does?" Most of the students in the canteen had never been up inside the treehouse, and although many had heard about the crimes at the college, few had shown any interest in the treehouse or knew anything about its dark history. But for Brian and Jamie, and for Sarah and Poppy, this was not the case. Smirks and dismissive glances were also coming from other batches of new chicks. One boy in a trench coat, who was sitting with a tall boy in a blazer, laughed and shouted out, "Here comes another oddball. Oh, I do love Freshers' Week. It's what they call a freak show." "Who does, John?" "We do, and the second, third, fourth-year students. When they get to gawp at the new batch of misfits. Come on, wake up, Jeff." Chick was the name given to all first-year students, John included, even though he looked far older than 18. "The kid is a chick of slight proportions, I'll give you that," Jeffrey laughed. "Underweight and hyperactive." "The poor kid," John grinned. "He runs into the canteen, flapping his wings about as if he's suddenly woken up and found himself in the wrong nest. What do you think, Jeff?" "I think we should sort him out, John." For the more obnoxious and scholarly undergraduates, similar to John, Kip was a weird-looking boy. "The kid doesn't look the academic type in his kiddie clothes," Geoffrey sniggered. "He should get a haircut. What is he, 12? So, like a blackbird fledgling, Kip had stumbled into the canteen and caught everyone's attention by causing a commotion. This was unfortunate, as it was to leave a lasting impression with many of the students. For the rest of his time at the college, Kip would be remembered and ridiculed for his theatrical outburst. Students like John and Geoffrey would point and snigger at him and whisper in huddled groups as he passed. Without a doubt, this moment of irrationality was to be an event Kip would live to regret. "When Spike plays his horn, it sounds as if somebody's shifting tables," said Sebastian, closing the window in Kip's room. "I think he ought to pack it in." Kip was sitting on his bed, staring at the bare walls. He wasn't paying attention to Sebastian, his new friend, as he rattled on. Kip was distracted by the cracks and chips in the paintwork, and all he could hear was some gibberish coming from his friend. Kip's room was one of the larger ones, and this helped it to look particularly drab. "I hate this deep crack," Kip sighed, pulling on a second jumper. The crack ran partly down the centre wall opposite the window. It was especially visible in the direct sunlight. Sebastian noticed the crack too, and understood intuitively what his friend was thinking. "We can go into town and we can buy a large poster to hide it, Kip." "I hate the no drawing pin rule," Kip grunted. "It's a bit mean." "A bit of filler when I leave and they'll be none the wiser," Sebastian replied. Kip flopped down onto his bed and snuggled into his pillow. "Well, I have to bring some life to this dreadful room." Sebastian had moved into the room next to Kip's room. His was smaller, but had wonderful views of the deer park, and unlike Kip's, that looked out onto the next hostel building in the canteen. I want to screw some hooks into the ceiling too. What do you need hooks for, Kip? Sebastian asked, reading a piece of paper he'd been handed at the accommodation office. To hang my collection of puppets on, he said. You've brought puppets? Thought I could use them in a play, an improvisation or something. Oh, in a film, Sebastian said excitedly. He passed Kip the paper. Look at this. The paper contained lists of rules and regulations. An animation, you mean? Kip asked, as Sebastian signalled for him to move over so he could sit down on the bed. To be more accurate, Kip's hostel sat directly to the right of the canteen building, facing towards the hill with narrow steps. The last hostel on campus was at the top of these steps and had the best view of the whole college area. I wish we had rooms in that hostel on the hill, Kip. You can see the whole campus, the music blocks to the right and the mansion house straight ahead. You can watch people come and go. And with the lakes in the foreground, all I see are trees and a few sheep. This hostel on the hill was where Poppy had her room. It was on the 3rd floor. She was the lone 4th-year student on campus, as the rooms were always reserved for the 1st-year students. But Poppy was lucky. She'd been chosen to be hostel representative. Poppy picked up her binoculars. She always kept them on her windowsill, and she pointed them towards a hostel at the bottom of her steps. Because of the curtains, it wasn't possible to see inside all of the rooms, and many were too dark, even with the windows open. Although several rooms did offer hope to the voyeuristic eye. As Poppy moved her gaze to the left, one such window of opportunity did present itself. It was situated on the 2nd floor and gave her a clear view inside. Her curiosity turned to delight when she saw it was a boy's room. But whose room was it? Was it the handsome guy in skater shorts sitting on the bed? Or was it the skinny blonde lying down reading a piece of paper? Poppy adjusted the focus and zoomed in on the boy in shorts. He was so good looking. Kip put down the paper and turned to look out the window again. Not such a good view, is it? Sebastian sighed. I might have the smaller room, but at least I'd get to watch the sheep. Kip swung his legs off the bed and moaned. I wanted a room in that building, he said, pointing to the hostel on the hill. A room without a crack. Poppy saw that the boy had come to the window and put down her binoculars. Sebastian scanned the campus, and in a more serious tone he asked, So what about this tree house you were shouting about the other day in the canteen? Well, I never had a chance to see inside it. My brother told me all about it, how he and his friend would climb up inside at night, drink beer and read from Frankenstein. Sounds heaps of fun, that does. You never got to see the treehouse, Sebastian, he said, his voice stronger and less muffled. Hop drew pictures of it. Look, I'll show you. Kip reached for one of Hop's diaries sitting on the shelf above the desk. He opened it and found a sketch he was referring to. He passed it to Sebastian. There must be an actual photograph somewhere. Hop and Max took of it. Anyway, I wanted to see inside it, inside the treehouse for myself, to climb up inside the trunk, into the room with slots for windows. Slots for windows? Asked Sebastian. Yes, where they'd watch the rabbits. Look at the drawing. Isn't it remarkable? That's why I was angry, because now I'll never know, I'll never experience what Hop had felt inside. Who cares about some stupid tree house, said Sebastian. This college is an incredible place. Have you walked around the lakes yet? Not yet. Me neither, he said, closing the diary. I've seen the sculpture trail, that's all. I spent an hour with my mum in the car, followed by another carrying boxes up to my room. So where is this trail? You haven't seen the sculpture trail? Asked Kip, surprised. It's by the university bar. Haven't you done any exploring yet? Ah, just practice some jumps by the mansion house, said Sebastian, gesturing with his hand. What's in all these boxes? 19. 19 boxes. Heavy they were too. Does look a lot of treasure, doesn't it? Treasure? You'll see what I've brought, Sebastian, when I've unpacked everything. So anyway, after lugging up all these boxes, I ran straight to the treehouse, but it wasn't there anymore. All I could see was this mud patch and a circle of paving slabs. Grab your jacket, Kip, said Sebastian, picking up his skateboard. Let's go before it gets dark. It's a mud patch. There's nothing to see. To explore the grounds, Kip. Just the trail, Sebastian, Kip said, smiling. It had been the first time he had smiled since arriving at his new digs. I do want to make a start on my room this evening. Not on your first night, surely. It's freshers. Cheap beer in the bar. I could do with a beer, said Kip. So we'll pick up a couple of bottles on the way, Kip. Come on. Poppy watched the boys leave the hostel from her window. She had to keep adjusting her binoculars as Sebastian rode wide circles around Kip as they headed towards the theatre block. Of course, Poppy had no idea they were en route to pick up beer, or that they were heading towards the sculpture trail. She looked down and spotted Jamie kicking his foot against a piece of broken paving. She opened her window and, leaning out, said quietly, "You're late. Are you coming up or not, Jamie?" "Sorry," he said, scratching his head. "Had to go to the barber's." The students from the more affluent background stood out amongst the working-class boys. This was due to wearing their hair natural and letting it grow to the collar. Jamie's crew cut didn't bother Poppy in the slightest. She gave him a sign of her approval. "I love it. It makes you look a bit scrawny, though." Jamie grinned and walked in through the door and then went up the stairs to her room. On leaving the student bar, the sculpture trail was accessed by turning right and hurrying along the narrow concrete path passing the coach park to the left. I say hurrying along, as the excitement of seeing the sculptures always had this effect on your legs. Before the entrance, and in amongst the trees, was an area of woodland to the right. This was reserved for the strange wooden sculptures and indescribable objects made by the art students. Hop said that this was the most pagan part of the college, Sebastian. Amongst the weird creations were wooden houses on plinths and masks on spikes. This unusual collection of oddities was especially spooky at dawn, rising out of the mist to a choral symphony of crows. The rows of wooden heads on poles excited Kip. He'd never seen so many. A loud cough from behind distracted his thoughts. He turned around to see who it was. It was a girl in a black dress. But it wasn't anyone he knew, so he ignored her, and she pushed her way past him. "My brother would have found all these carvings interesting, Sebastian," Kip said, but his friend was too far ahead to hear him. Kip at that moment recalled his hobby horse, the one that had belonged to his brother. This was a head on a pole, a horse's head. What a strange thing to remember, he thought. Again, his thoughts were broken, this time by the sound of an argument taking place. Something about a bad serve. It was coming from the tennis courts. But before he could remark on the noise, Sebastian whizzed past him on his skateboard. "Come on, Kip," he called. "But don't you want to look at the art?" Kip followed Sebastian, passing under the pine tree brimming with its shiny cones. This was it, he thought, the entrance to adventures unbound. This whole place is waiting to baffle us with her mysteries. So for the second time that day, Kip stepped into the long wooden tunnel. The walkway was covered in hedge bindweed, giving shelter to students from wind and rain under its large arrow-shaped leaves. The long tunnel snaked its way into the sculpture garden, and as you walked along it, the tangled and twisted dry vine branches above let in spots of light, making patterns on your clothes and on the ground around you. End of chapter 2, part 1.